Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are in this great nation and across the world today on the World Wide Web. My name is Bobby Halton, and I work for Penwell Corporation, and we bring you Fire Engineering Magazine, Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment Magazine, and Fire Rescue Magazine, as well as GEMS, Law Officer, and a host of other publications. With me today will be the Editor-in-Chief of Fire Rescue Magazine, my good partner and cohort, Erich Roden, as well as our two very special guests, Matt McDowell, Training Officer from North Charleston, Carolina, and Dan Sheridan, a Battalion Chief of the FDNY. Today we're going to be talking training. So we're going to have a great hangout. We're glad you were able to visit with us. We hope you'd go and check out FDIC.com immediately when you get a chance. Please register for FDIC. This broadcast is being brought to you by FDIC. We're going to have a tremendous show this year, expecting about 35,000 firefighters to attend. Some incredible classes being offered, everything from bailouts with Jason Hovelman to a UL live study that you can participate in the hands-on training. Of course, the collapse class will be there. There'll be flashover training. There'll be live fire training. So please, if you want to be involved in the hands-on training, it fills up quickly. It sold out last year about a month and a half, 2 months out. So please register for the hot training early. It fills up very quick. We only have about 7,000 slots in there, so it fills up rather quickly. Also be some incredible classes, and keynoting this year will be Steve Kerber and Sean DeCrane, so as well as just a myriad of other events at FDIC.com. So please go to FDIC.com. Today we have a special opportunity immediately following this webcast. We're going to have a special webcast by Carl Haddon on maximizing your hydraulic extrication tool performance. Maximizing your hydraulic extrication tool performance, being brought to you by our good friends from Hamatro. Wonderful, wonderful webcast. It's absolutely free. Go to fireapparatus.com immediately following this broadcast. So we've got some great guests. I'm going to let them briefly introduce themselves to you as we go around the room, and I'll start with my partner in crime, Erich Roden.
Hi, good morning, afternoon, everybody. Again, I'm Erich Roden, the Editor-in-Chief of Fire Rescue Magazine. I'm also a Battalion Chief of the City of Milwaukee Fire Department and former Chief of Training. Today we're going to talk about a whole host of topics that are definitely near and dear to our hearts, and some ways to better incorporate technology, training delivery methods, etc. So, without further ado, let's start off with the first question. We got a very heavy day, a lot of great stuff to talk about. So. Let's start off with the first question.
Okay, guys. Well, we thought we'd start today with, what do you think the biggest challenges are to training today? And Matt's running training, Danny does training all around the world, Erich's run the academy. What do you three guys think, and then I'll give you the kind of the corporate side of it, but what do you guys think the biggest challenges we have to overcome in training are today? And we'll start with, why don't we start with you, Matt, and see what's going on down there in North Charleston.
Well, I think all in all, especially just to kind of pile it on with the Ebola situation, is just the increasing demands on what a quote-unquote all-hazards fire department is responsible for as far as their service delivery. Unfortunately, I think in most cases, a 26-hour day would be ideal for everybody. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time, so really the time constraints of trying to keep everybody adequately prepared to meet the challenges that we're facing now, whether it's new challenges with like the situation with Ebola, or ongoing retraining, with like some of the information that we're getting from the research. It's such a dynamic thing right now that the biggest challenge is how to fit it all in.
Wow, yeah, that's I had kind of similar problems when I was running the training academy down in Albuquerque. Is that the minute you think you've got your schedule set up for the year, one major event like this Ebola thing, or terrorism, or you name whatever's capturing the headlines, gets thrown on your plate and kind of has to get moved to the head of the list. So it's that constant juggle. That is a huge challenge for training officers, especially those directing training, and then staying ahead of all that curve. What are your thoughts on that, Danny?
Well, hi, Bobby. Well, my thoughts are twofold. As you know, I work in both the FDNY, and I also have my own outside interest in the South America and in Africa and whatnot. So first, I'll address the FDNY, and I'm not actually involved in formal training in the FDNY. Battalion chief in my battalion. I've become the training officer, and one thing that the FDNY has done very well is they've created a website called the Diamond Plate. And a Diamond Plate is a website. It's actually part of the intranet. And I like the fact that the guys, I've noticed now that they've taken it upon themselves now, instead of it coming from the top down, it's coming from the bottom up, where the guys will go onto the website, and usually they'll have 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 different topics a day, and then they'll bring it into the kitchen, and that'll be the impetus for a drill for the day. So instead of coming from the top, which, you know, and dragging guys into the kitchen or out to a multi-unit drill, you know, it's there for everybody to see and access, and we're all on the same page. So it's not really a challenge, but the challenge for me, I find, comes where maybe this new generation, maybe doesn't quite understand the importance of training, of how important it is. Like, I always think of like a carpenter, you know, in his trade. You know, he does his trade every day. He's always banging nails. He's always putting up sheetrock or whatever it is. And in our line of work, we don't actually do it every day. So how do we do it every day? You know, we have to drill. My own. Go ahead, Bobby. I'm sorry.
No, that's a great point. You know, we come to work every day ready to go to work, but we don't get the chance to use all our skills and training every day. So drill has to be there. And I know FDNY does a ton of drill, and you're keyed into it. I think it's a bigger issue for departments around the country that don't get as much work, and I think that the drill is an issue there. At least that's what I think. But I didn't mean to cut you off, Dan.
No, you're right. It's okay. I'm just our thing has done a tremendous job. That fire academy is like a beehive. I mean, we could probably use a fire academy in every borough. We have mobile training. It never stops. I mean, guys are, and as you know, the job is so big. We have 5 boroughs. We have 200 engine companies, 140 truck companies. So how do you fit all these guys into the fire academy? So it sometimes becomes incumbent upon the battalion chiefs and the captains and the lieutenants to spearhead the training. And as you know, everyone's different. Some guys are more motivated than other guys, and that's where the trick is, you know, to try to make it palatable for these guys. And I find the biggest challenge right now is trying to just keep the guys motivated. As far as training in other parts of the world, like South America, they're very motivated. It's become, I found myself over the years always having to just like invent props. You know, I would tell them, like, I need a forcible entry door, I need a standpipe, or I need a maze to do the mass confidence, and you know, they're putting pallets together and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny how it's different challenges in different parts of the world, you know.
Well, what do you think, Erich? What's the biggest challenge in a municipal organization like yours? Milwaukee's a big job, a very busy job. What are some of the challenges, or what do you think the biggest challenges are doing that? And then you and I could kind of bounce back what the challenges are from a corporate side, trying to provide training via the magazines and the show, FDIC.
Sure. You know, I would say the biggest challenge is your own cultural challenge. What is your department's culture with regards to training? Does training, like Chief Sheridan mentioned, are we looking for bottom-up type leadership and and topics and ideas for training, or does it have to come from a formalized training academy? Also, how receptive are companies? Is it just a motivation issue? Is it a morale issue? Is it is it your own organization's identity? I think all these things culturally come into play and present their own unique challenges, but overcoming those, again, is focusing on the importance of what we're actually doing, why we're here, and how important it is to train. Even though ironically, in most, especially cities comparable to mine, and Chief Sheridan's, it's usually our busiest companies that are doing the most training, if you can believe that. So, I don't think that's necessarily a bad culture. But again, it's that identity and where you feel you fit in your organization. Do you want to be better? Do you want your organization to be better? Do you want your battalion to be better? Where I work, there are definitely companies that train every single day, twice a day, sometimes in between working out 3 or 4 times a day. So those are enviable cultures to have. I think every firehouse should adopt something similar. And I think training would transcend to other things with regards to what we do with our community risk reduction efforts, what we do, our other PR efforts, etc. So if we start with our culture, doing an introspective look at everything we're doing and how we're doing it, definitely, I think that we'll start to eliminate some of these challenges. We exponentially reduce some of these challenges if we start with a cultural look.
I just don't mind. I think there was a couple of interesting things that came up in there. I'd like to kind of dovetail off them because we're hanging out. So it kind of caught my interest. 2 things came up. One was when Matt said the Ebola thing, got kind of thrown on his plate, and it's a challenge when you're a training officer. Now you've got this unexpected necessity, if you will, to address, and whether or not how you perceive the Ebola issue is irrelevant. The problem is that it's how the public perceives it and how we have to be ready. I mean, you might say, well, what are the odds of it hitting my town? Well, I'm sure a lot of folks in Dallas thought that before Mr. Duncan visited town, and now it's a big issue. So it could hit your town as mobile as folks are today. So I thought that was a fascinating question. So I want to ask, first on that point, what did your organizations do, and was there any, and address it in any way, and how was it addressed? And then the second question was, Danny and Erich both kind of commented on the climate, the environment within their organizations, and or within an organization, and how that impacts drill. How do we affect? Because the word culture is a bigger word, but what we're really talking about is kind of the environment or the behaviors inside of a culture, the normative behaviors, which is really the environment in the station. Because you could have an environment in one station that's locked on, hard charging, and another district or station where it's laid back and not really all that interested and kind of different. So, and we're always preaching to the choir. So I thought I'd kind of dovetail off those 2 topics from it. If you guys don't mind, real quick, just telling folks, what did your organizations do with this Ebola thing? And because we went after it on fire engineering and fire rescue, Firefighter Nation. And, Bill Carey was doing a great job of getting information up from the IAFF and the IAFC and the CDC, as well as Pete Proclio on fire engineering. So we were pushing stuff out there. How did you guys address that? And then how do we affect the environment? And I got my own goofy theory on that, and I don't know what you guys are going to think of it. But how do we affect the environment, and what did you guys do in regards to Ebola?
Well, I'll hop in. I'll hop in first here. Sorry about that. One of the first things we did was definitely look at our own response readiness, what we were capable of doing, equipment-wise, response-wise. Not jumping to conclusions and panicking internally, and learning from the CDC what the best practices were with regards to first responder safety. The second thing we did is we educated the public. Obviously, there's a certain public perception and panic when they see a couple stories or a plane landing anywhere within a 1 million square mile of an airport, thinking that it's going to spread. So educating the public, I think, was as big a responsibility for the fire department as our own internal preparations. So, I think we've headed off the pass. I think a lot of fire departments took a step back and realized, maybe we've always been prepared. We have equipment at the ready, and it's a way for us to do again a look at our own universal precautions practices for all types of diseases. So I think overall, for the most part, we were prepared. I think at the federal government level, we needed a lot of that, more of that communication, et cetera. So the public, the public education on that, I think has been of late, and a lot of fire departments are definitely communicating with each other as well, which we also did. So I think we've had a very successful response to the Ebola crisis and our response readiness.
What about you, Danny? You're right there. You got two of the busiest airports in the world right there, LaGuardia and JFK. What did the FDNY do with Ebola?
I was actually very proud of our response. When it really hit the fan, I was home and I was telling my wife, I said, if it's going to happen anywhere, it's going to happen in New York. And actually in the Bronx, where I am, we have a segment of the population from Africa. And my biggest fear that night, I told her, I said that I'm worried about these guys going on a routine EMS run because we do a CFRD. We're not fully, as you know, we're not fully integrated with EMS, but we're going to get there first. And I didn't want my guys walking into a Holocaust, So the next day, I had already thought about this, and the job was way ahead of me. They came down with updating our bulletins and our protocols, and there was stuff on the diamond plate. And they had actually the commissioner and the chief department had a meeting with all the division commanders. So they were very proactive, and they were way ahead of it. So I think still, it's a possibility in New York. How many millions of people come through the city every day? But I think that given the size and the scope of this, I think we've got a pretty good. We're ahead of the curve on this one.
That's outstanding. It's great to hear that an organization was proactive and as well as responsive, obviously. But you would expect that an organization as refined and as elegant as the FDNY to come across and address a possible crisis aggressively like that, and kind of really great to hear that you say that, Danny. So Matt, you're out there in North Charleston. What did you all do?
We're extremely fortunate in this area that we have a lot of phenomenal hospitals, and a lot of them provide our med control, and a lot of them are teaching hospitals. So they're obviously very interested in what's going on, what the best way to deal with these things are. Very good at being proactive. So a lot of our response to it is following their lead on it, because they really are the tip of the spear. So they've already adapted the EMS protocols, and the short answer is we're really just following the recommendations of the CDC and then our own state health department's recommendations as closely as possible. They've been pretty proactive. We're educating our hazmat teams on being able and being ready to decon when and if to a facility or a house that there is an exposure. What does that look like as far as containing it? What's our level of involvement going to be there? And educating our EMTs on it's easy to say that the county provide the ALS transport service. So it's really their protocol that we're going to follow. But obviously, like most fire departments, we're the ones who show up first. So just making sure that even though it's quote unquote not our protocol, that we're still in that loop. We still understand the questions that need to be asked to kind of pre-screen or screen once we arrive. These individuals to make sure that when we're there, how to actually deal with it head on, limiting access, knowing when to withdraw, knowing when to get those additional resources out there without throwing up the red flag when the bell first rings and screaming all these resources there and really just sending the cavalry for the flu, so kind of touchy. So
You know, when you were talking about it, reminded me back in the day when we had the anthrax issues going on, remember? And I think we all probably ran on, 50, 60, 70, depending on where you were, anthrax calls. But anything that was white powder was automatically, anthrax. Remember those days?
Absolutely. Yeah, even the coffee creamer by the coffee pot, I had a few of those even. So
I had a couple of those.
Believe it or not, we had to go in and scoop coffee creamer.
I had a couple of those. Yeah. It's interesting stuff. So the second part of my question, which I think was interesting, I love the way you guys, kind of tie stuff all together. One of the things I wrote about the other day, which I thought was kind of funny, and Danny and Erich both brought it up. I wrote a piece called "Preaching to the Choir," and often at FDIC, or your conferences, you go there, and the cats that are there are the choir. I mean, they're the people who are locked on, engaged, and it's great that they're there. And my point is that the choir then goes out and lives those, inspirations and really, fire other people up. So my thought on like FDIC was that 35,000 of the most locked on firefighters in the world jam in there. FDIC International has got the most locked on instructors in the world who are just absolutely insane about training and how important it is and love it and want to know everything. They want all the gouge. They don't want the surface. They want the gouge. They want to know everything there is to know about something, the theory, the applications, the deviations, the modifications. So, and I love it, and I think it's critical. And I think, from my standpoint, is that's how you change the environment in a house or change the environment in an organization, is you get guys and gals like that from all over the world or from your organization to come to something like that and get their batteries recharged and keep them going. You just need that one, a Billy Graham, if you will, or that one, person in there who really inspires people to train, changes the environment. What do you do, or how do you try to change the environment or promote an environment of training and focus in your organizations or in your divisions?
Want me to go first?
I don't care. This is a hangout, man. Hang out and jump in. I do.
All right. I could tell, my favorite story is this, and it's kind of really just typical as what really occurs every day in the firehouse. When I was a captain, my first year I was assigned to a pretty slow place. They were kind of unmotivated bunch of guys, and I was working with another captain who was very highly motivated, Bobby, who you know. And we turned that place upside down. But my philosophy was this. I said, guys, you could be a slow company, but you don't have to be a bad company. And what I meant is that just because you don't do it like they do it in East New York or Bushwick or whatever in the Bronx, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. So I took that approach, and I always wanted to have successes. I wanted the guys to always be successful. So we took very baby steps in the beginning, and sometimes guys were for it, and sometimes they just revolted and they did their own thing. But I stuck to it, and what made me feel like I was finally getting through to them is after I left that place and I went back to the Bronx, I got a phone call from them, and they thanked me, and they said, Cap, we want to thank you because we just had a fire, and we did one of those techniques that you showed us. It was a rope stretch, actually. And the chief thought they were the cat's meow, and they said they looked like all-stars, and I just felt like that all that effort that I put in with those guys wasn't wasted because that's what motivates guys is when they're successful, and so I always don't lose heart, even though I go to a place and you get nothing but stares at you sometimes when you're drilling. You don't realize what's sinking in, and I'm sure the chief thought they were like the best thing since sliced bread that day. You know, they looked like all stars. And I always use that as my motivation when I feel like, hey, you know what? You know, I'm just beating my head against the wall and I want to give up. But, you know, you never know when you're reaching those guys, you know, and you're making an impact. So that's my one story about you know, motivating guys and a success story.
Yeah, move towards great success. Matt, I know you've got a great company with Safe Firefighter. You do training, and you've got some really locked on, you know, awesome instructors in that group. How do you guys, you know, spread the word? What do? You do anything different, or you do anything, you know, what do you guys do, and how do you work it in North Charleston? Because I know that's a great group. If you aren't familiar with Matt's group, Matt does a great blog, and he's got a great group of guys and gals that work with him. So talk a little bit about your group and what your group's doing and how you're changing the environment.
Sure. We really the primary existence, or what really makes us tick, is, you know, we identified that there is such a thing as the academy way or the book way and the street way. That does exist. It's not a unicorn.
Say it's not so.
But we really try to, you know, when we're doing our classes, we really try to parallel and bridge that gap, you know, by relating, you know, you know, if you had a better understanding, for example, with forcible entry, you know, if you can adequately size up what the building is built from, then you're going to know where the give in that door is going to be. You know, if you understand your response district, you're going to understand the hazards you're getting into ahead of time. You know, but and really just really trying to surround them with all that stuff that, you know, everybody can, you know, the Rugby Basin recruit school, you know, week 3, week 4, you know, when everybody's nice and settled in and starting to glaze over, you know, trying to bring that academy stuff back up front, recharge it, and then tie it directly into how it's going to impact them as soon as they go back to the firehouse after class, and, you know, and how they can tie in, you know, even though they're not really tricks, you know, how they can tie in those quote-unquote advanced skills, which are really nothing more than just being good at your job and getting beyond the basics. How that all kind of blends together, you know, and we try to maintain a very relaxed atmosphere, you know, where everybody just kind of, just like we're doing, can just hang out, you know, tie in some, you know, some more stories, and really just kind of hit them from every direction and kind of show how everything matters, you know, because so much, even in the recruit school setting, I've heard instructors say, well, we're going to teach you this, and then they'll teach you how to really do it when you get to your company or your department or whatever, you know, and I think that kind of does an injustice to the material that they're getting ready to cover, because as soon as they say that, it's like just they're off. You know, well, I don't really need to know this because they're going to go over this when I get back, and they're going to show me the real way to do it. Well, it all matters. So that's really what we try to do is show people why that stuff matters. You know, how it all ties together, and how, you know, and because the essentials are just that. It's the essential skill. It's not the end all. You know, how all that is applied when you're not going into a concrete 15 by 15 burn building. You know, when you have to stretch over stairs or use a rope or things like that, you know, how all those fundamental skills all play into that, the success of that operation. So.
Yeah, I used to get that comment a lot from the guys. If we ever have a fire in a 15 by 15 concrete building, we're ready to go. So, Eric, you want to say anything about the environment, or you're creating a better environment, or you want to move on to the next question? Your call, brother.
Well, you know, I guess I'll touch on it briefly. You know, maybe digress a little bit here, but I think when we create a training environment, especially from the academy, you know, the academy unfortunately has some constraints to teach it the book way, and That's not a bad thing, because the bookway has been vetted, it's standardized, it's based on consensus standards. So us bringing companies in and going through skill stations and showing them how they were taught during the academy based upon the job performance requirements of any consensus standard that we're using. I think it's important to teach that way, and then obviously companies go back to the field, they do certain things, they may change it, obviously. Stuff really doesn't stray too far away from the consensus standards or the JPR, but I really think that's where the creativity and that's where the efficiency and the bettering of our craft, if you will, emerges, is when we get these companies together. Like Chief Sheridan mentioned, performing a rope stretch and maybe finding that way, to get a line up there faster, a faster way to get to the floor below, or whatnot. So I'm just using that as an example, but creating that formalized environment in a training academy, the informalized environment in the firehouse definitely leads to great things, and I really think that that's where we start seeing the things in fire engineering and fire rescue. That's where a lot of that creativity happens, and it's portrayed obviously in our respective journals. So that's bettering the fire service. That's the landscape I think we need, and obviously as our academies grow in technology and ways of delivering the training, etc., I think we're going to see that creativity go. So let me throw that as a segue into I guess another part of the conversation as we wrap up the second half hour of our talk here. And this is a question for the group. What learning technologies are we using to advance our training delivery? And I know I mentioned Diamond Plate. That's what we refer to as a learning management system. Maybe I'll just tighten the question up by asking: are you using a learning management system in North Charleston? What are you delivering on that platform, and where do you see that platform taking your fire department? And this second half question for Chief Sheridan as well. Where do you see Diamond Plate in the future in the FDNY?
We have a learning management program, and one of the comments when I came here was, and I've actually used quite a few other similar types of programs, but one of the things that is true of all of them is they told me we have this program. It's very, very useful. It's very, very dynamic, and we're using about 10% of it. So we're using about 10% of what it's capable of doing. So the platform that we're using, we can put lesson plans from IFTA manuals or fire engineering manuals on that platform for direct access. A company officer can log in there, and there are preloaded files, both from our side and from the the manufacturer, that they can go on there if they're looking for a training topic. Those materials are all on there. And again, it sounds like what you guys are doing with Diamond Plate. Guys can actually have us load, or they can upload their own stuff, that they feel is pertinent. So it really provides a lot of dynamic opportunity for really a multimedia training aspect. It doesn't just have to be lesson plans. It can be videos. We can post videos from online, and that dynamic aspect of it really helps us out, because it gives us the opportunity to kind of keep it fresh and give people an opportunity to still get training, even if the training division can't get out and direct that drill or whatever. And the best part is it documents all of the training, and and it actually tracks if we're meeting the requirements that are set forth by other alphabet agencies. So it's very easy to pull that information off of. So.
Are you using, Matt and Danny, or Eric, are you using, besides learning management systems, are you using anything else in terms of technology to add as an adjunct to your current training? In other words, and even just to your operations at the fire department. I mean, I'm always amazed at the capabilities that these things have. Whether it's your, this is just an iPhone, but whether it's your Samsung or your Galaxy or whatever it is, to send video, to do text messaging, to keep people connected. Do you have any? Are you using any other? Besides, and we should talk more about learning management systems because I think they're great. And it was also interesting that you said we're only using about 10%, which is what most computer manufacturers will use 10% of a computer's capability. Is that by design, Matt, or are you taking baby steps, or with the technology, or is it just because it's so rich? And then anything else that you and Danny or Eric are using out there to help manage information and help keep people connected in the fire department?
If you want, I'll grab this, Bobby.
Yeah.
Here's what I feel. Okay, I've been on the job now 28 years, and I was fortunate enough to get on the job, in '86, and I worked with a lot of guys who had been what we call the war years in the South Bronx. And I think it's like kind of two parts to this question. Okay, it's almost like you got to think of it like a chef. I could have a recipe, right? And you could give me a recipe, and I'll make a cake or make a sauce or a pot roast or whatever. And then Eric and Matt, they could have the same recipe and make it differently, and it's still going to be good. However, and the diamond plate is that it's only as good as whoever's going to deliver it. Okay, like what I don't want to lose in the fire service is that human factor where you're getting the guys' experiences. And what makes us so great in the fire department in New York City is that sometimes we'll get officers that come from different boroughs. And I'll give you a great example. Like in Queens, in South Jamaica, they have a lot of private dwellings. And where I am, we have a lot of high-rises, high-rise fireproof multiple dwellings and a lot of tenements. And we don't have all that much experience in private dwellings. And sometimes we'll get a guy that'll come from like Canarsie or where they have these types of buildings that we have, but we don't get a lot of because we have so few of them. And he'll be able to take something off diamond plate, like one of these things, we call it a Canarsie. Canarsie tenement has more stories in the back than it does in the front. And they're very tricky for a battalion chief because it all comes down to communication. But we'll have a guy that'll come from Brooklyn, like a lieutenant, and he'll say, hey, in Canarsie in Brooklyn we did it this way, and we share the information. And firstly, we'll have guys that worked in the Bronx that'll become officers out in Queens, tremendous experience in fireproof multiple dwellings and tenements, and take what's on diamond plate and say, hey, you know what, woman, you got to watch out for this and watch out for that. And that's how I see training going, is that keeping that human element in the middle of it, using the technology around it. That's how it works the best for me.
Nice. Eric, you got anything to add there, buddy?
I'm sorry, I'm having some tech difficulties here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, and I'll build upon his question a little bit, maybe as an aside. I think, we need to look at our response areas and definitely look at, training to those. I mean, obviously, a lot of departments will spend a lot of time on standpipe work and a lot of, commercial fires, et cetera, when they're in an area with private dwellings. So I think being area specific is important, and definitely designing our training around that. So I thought that was a good point he talked about guys coming in from other areas and with experience from other areas and kind of catching people up with regards to the first due area to make them even more capable.
All right.
Well, if I may add something real quick.
Sure.
To kind of tag on to both of those, it's very easy to be all the multimedia options that we have for training, because outside information of really good quality is very easy to come by on a computer, either by video or by print or whatever. that it's a very easy trap to fall into, especially as a training officer. When it's getting longer every day, it's very easy to just start pumping things onto that learning platform, or start to just email out links and calling it training, and to kind of, very much agree with both Danny and Erich. That's all the multimedia should be an accent or a reinforcement of what we're going out and doing. It should be, that sort of looking for.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Matt.
Yeah,
You got to keep the human element in there.
Right.
You just can't send links out and say, "Here's your training." You have to decipher it and translate it. It's like another language.
Mrs. Smith didn't call us to her house to read her a book or show her a YouTube video. She showed us there to perform, and unless we're going out and doing it, that's going to be a heck of a challenge for us.
Yeah, I think you're both hitting it on the head. Is that you can have a certain amount of content, but when you bring home, like Danny said, guys that maybe deal with a lot of scissor stairways, or guys that deal with open stairwells, or guys that do well stretches, into an environment where maybe they don't do that much of whatever that technique or tactic was, it helps bring it alive, because they can tell stories of fires where they actually did it and why it was important. They can tell you some of the nuances about how couplings are going to hang up, or how to force a certain type of door that might be predominant in their strip malls or newer strip malls. So I think that's really kind of the key. The technology is important and it's great, but even more important is, as Danny said and Matt reiterated, that human element into it as well, so that you really connect with people. I think the reason why FDIC is so important to the fire service as a training event is that we get to do this. We get to look at each other when we're doing the training, because lots of times, you'll be doing something online, and if you don't get it, there's nobody to capture that you didn't get it. But when you're, sitting with a group of guys and gals, and somebody kind of gives you that, 10,000-mile stare, you can go, well, hang on a second, did you follow that? And they might say, I have no idea what you're talking about, or, well, kinda. And then you can back up and go through it and such and catch up to it. I had one question I really wanted to ask you guys, because you're also involved in training, and it's kind of a three-parter, which is kind of my usual motif. I apologize for that, but I'm getting a message from my producer here. Sorry about that. Here's a question. We got a question from Tim Niemers, who's a great friend of fire engineering. He said, is the 10% usage the result of generational learning gaps, similar to the adoption of email reports or email fire communications? Great question, Tim. I guess that's directed towards you, Matt, and Tim, for sending in that question. Give me a shout, and we'll send you a book from FireEngineering.com's library. We'll find out what book is missing from your library. Let us know, and I'll hook you up with a copy. Great question from Tim. You think that 10% usage, does it have anything to do with generational stuff, Matt? Before we get to my question, with generational stuff, or is it just a content issue?
First of all, I want to say hey to Melvin out there. Thanks for that question. I think it is a generational thing, but I think it's a generational thing that happens every generation. I mean, every generation is not as good as the generation before them, according to that generation. So and I think the learning curve running into now is because technology and computers and multimedia and phones, I mean, everything, that written information is so easily available to us that's just how people get used to receiving their information. And I do feel like there is a little bit of a gap there, because, I mean, even in elementary schools, kids are issued iPads. They're not even, I mean, now we're not even getting printed, so to speak. So, when you get into a very dynamic and physically manipulative job like the fire service, I think that, as instructors and trainers, we have to be able to adjust our mentality to be able to really, in a lot of cases, teach people how to use their hands for something other than texting. You know, and that's going to be that's going to continue to be an ongoing challenge. But it's also a very slippery slope and easy pitfall for us to fall into, kind of like what we had already discussed. I mean, it's very easy to just throw things online, throw things on a website. Oh, here, go read this blog, and call it training. So, you know, we have to be very vigilant as instructors to be creative in creating those hands-on training opportunities and delivering it in a way that is received by the generation who's used to getting their information electronically.
Well, that was a great answer, Matt, and I appreciate that. That's a lot of insight and a lot of things I hadn't thought of. Before we go to our webcast this afternoon, Maximizing Hydraulic Extrication Tool Performance with Carl Haddon on fireapparatusmagazine.com, I would like to ask one last question of the group to kind of wrap this up. We got about 10 minutes, so just real quickly, what do you think the most, and it's a two-parter, what do you think the most important training we can do today tactically is, and then what do you think the most important training we can do for the individual or individually is? So by tactically, I mean, is it flow pass, forcible entry, hose line movement? You know, what tactical piece of it do you three guys think is the most critical for us to be focusing on as trainers today, or in your particular organization? And then, what do you think is the most important thing for us to be focusing on in terms of the individual? Is it social awareness? Is it sexual assault? Is it behavioral health? What do you think that for the individual? Is it just encouraging lifelong learning? In other words, continuing that educational deal. So, real quick, guys, we got about 10 minutes to go before we go to our webcast on hydraulics with Carl Haddon at fireapparatusmagazine.com. What is the most important tactical thing we should be doing right now, or you're doing right now, and what's the most important thing that you think is for the individual right now? And whoever wants to start.
I'll jump in first on this one. And this isn't a cop-out by saying that. One, training on the engine. Okay, hose line management, stretching, operating the first line. That's the foundation of any training need. You know, as if we look at line of duty deaths, fireground injuries, almost all of those have some type of water problem associated with them. So definitely keeping our engine operations definitely tuned in always. I mean, it's the easiest thing to dismiss and pass on because we do a lot of it. And secondly, with regards to the individual training, I'll say physical fitness, because we can correlate mental health, we can correlate a whole lot of things in our personal well-being in general, and our ability to conduct hands-on training and participate in drills, etc., is on fitness. So let's tighten up our engine, tighten up our fitness, and I think definitely we'll
Good stuff, Danny. What do you think the most important thing to be looking at tactically is, and then what do you think the most important stuff for right now for you or your command to be looking at in terms of the individual?
Right. You know, tactically, I'm going to concur with Erich. It's hose lines, it's water. You know, Andy Fredericks said, you know, if we get the water on the fire, then people don't have to jump out windows. Yeah. And I see that even though I think it's important, I see a lot of guys, you know, spend a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort in jumping out windows and all this stuff. But, you know, if we put that same effort into putting the fire out, then, like he said, we're not going to have to jump out the windows, right? As far as the individual, I liken it to like I do scuba diving, and I find that I have that regulator and that air pack, that diving inside and out, backwards and forwards, blindfolded, and I think that firefighters have to become very intimately of their SCBA, because when it hits the fan, you have to be able to rely on that SCBA to be able to get yourself out. I've changed my thinking a lot, and I've got a lot of friends now my age that are succumbing to cancer and whatnot, and I'm starting to get a bad feeling that possibly maybe it had to do with not only 9/11, but maybe some of the stuff that we're exposed to. And I used to think, and the way I was brought into the fire service is that, you know, you don't really wear a mask. It's like it's an extra, it's a novelty thing, and it was a little more harsh than that. And I think now I equate being in smoke with being in water. You cannot breathe smoke these days. It's too toxic. It's too poisonous. And I think firefighters have to become much more confident in their SCBA.
Wow, good stuff. Oh, great points. Matt, what's your thoughts?
I actually agree 100% with both Erich and Danny, and I think it all kind of relates to kind of the elephant in the room right now, which is all of the research and all the interesting conversations that have spun off of it. You've got some people who feel threatened by some of the information that comes out and the implications, and then you got the other side of it, and I'm kind of referring to both ends of the spectrum, not necessarily the people that are migrating that gray area in the middle, that are just wholeheartedly just blanket statement, changing our operations and whatnot. I think somewhere in the middle is that educational opportunity where again, the education in smoke, the volatility of a smoke, fire dynamics, and you relate it to the importance of engine operations. Making sure that engine operators understand why it's important to be flexible and efficient in their hose stretches. But likewise, educate these truck members on why it's important to coordinate ventilation. I mean, when I came in, it was vent as you go. If the hose line was in the front door, it was pretty much a green light to vent. And in most cases. So that's definitely not the case anymore. That coordination, the changing emphasis on different search tactics. Really, you can kind of use all the fire research as a speaking block from which to communicate and relate all these other tactics and why it's important that they're all coordinated and why we stay proficient and efficient at all of them.
Well, I'll tell you, I have to pick out a quick prop here. This is the book I'd probably like to send to Tim, and everything that Matt just said. For over 17 years, Tommy Brennan preached exactly what Matt just said. And so it's interesting, and Matt made another interesting comment. I can't remember exactly who said the quote, but someone said that every generation looks at the generation that preceded it as having been somewhat less educated and competent as them, and the generation that's following them to be lazier and less motivated than them, which is kind of an interesting deal. And that goes from Socrates on down the line. So that being said, I think we've got a great generation of firefighters right now who are locked on, motivated. Absolutely, some of the best firefighters I've ever met are in this current generation, including Matt, who's a young guy and 14 years in the job, and look at the hard charging job he's doing, and Danny's and Erich are much younger than me also, and also hard charging guys. But and what Dan Majikowski and Steve Kerber have done with the UL studies, and I encourage everybody to go to the UL website. I'm trying to remember the exact name of the
ULFirefighterSafety.com.
Firefighter Safety. Thank you, Erich. I'm trying to pull out my patch here so I can remember the name of the organization. Go there, take the classes. Dan and Steve are going to tell you that they're not discovering anything new. What they're doing is taking some of the knowledge we've known for a long time and validating it through science, some of our presumptions, some of our assumptions about what was going on. And they're finding out some new things in terms of the actual fire behavior science of it. But if you go all the way back to James Braywood in 1866 to be talking about flow paths, what Dan and Steve are doing for us now, and Pravin and George Healy and John Cirillo and Derek Alconis and Eddie Harden and all the great guys and Erich Roden, myself and Harvey Eisner, all the great guys and gals involved with, and Becky, all the great guys and gals involved in the studies, is taking that science and then looking what's going on in certain instances so that we can kind of get the information out to people that this is why we do this and this is why we do that. That's why Tommy said for an entire career that the fire ground isn't about doing this, then this, then this. It's about doing everything together in synchronization with a desired outcome in mind. This is one of the greatest books you can pick up and read. Tom Brennan's Random Thoughts, just an amazing book, and you know, really captures a lot of what Matt just said in a beautiful way. But and an absolute inspiration. If you don't have it, it should be a must-have in your library. But that being said, I'd really like to take a moment here to thank Danny and Matt for joining us, and Eric. As always, it's always fun to hang out with my partner in crime there, and we're together most of the time every day anyway. But always wonderful to be able to hang out with you all. Please go to fireapparatusmagazine.com right now. Maximizing hydraulic extrication tool performance with Carl Haddon. Carl Haddon's a great guy, fire engineering, long-time fire engineering guy, now a fire rescue guy as well, Firefighter Nation guy, knows a ton about extrication, brilliant guy. Go to fireapparatusmagazine.com right now and sign up for and get involved. There's a great webcast starting in about 2 minutes. So on behalf of our two guests and my buddy Eric, we'd like to thank you for joining with us in today's Hangout. We hope there was some valuable insight. I'd like to thank Matt. Please go to Matt's website on firefighterNation.com and take a look at Matt's latest blog. Danny's got plenty of stuff up on fire engineering, and we hope to see you all at FDIC this year. I'm Bobby Halton. On behalf of everybody, please be careful out there.